Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, I went on a game dev hike for the first time since October. And I just want to preface the video you're about to see with a few apologies. Firstly, my eyebrow game was out of control and it's probably very distracting because kind of all over the place like this and I didn't brush them back. It's actually kind of embarrassing. Secondly, and way more importantly, I tried something new in this video where I wanted to move the camera forward so you could see where I was going, pointing the camera forward, sorry. And by doing so, the microphone sounds very muffled. And I'm trying to fix them up a little bit in post-production, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. I thought about not uploading this video, but I know a lot of people enjoy seeing the Australian bushland, and some people even enjoy my chats of wisdom. So I've uploaded it anyway for posterity, and I do apologize. I'll figure out a technique for the next one. I'll actually probably buy an external mic to make things a little bit more consistent throughout the video. Finally, I also want to apologize that I really wasn't on my game yesterday. It was hot and humid. And it was a really beautiful day's hiking, but for the first few hours I didn't record anything. And then when I did record stuff, I was quite tired and my mind was wandering. So you might find this one a lot less focused than the first game dev video, which I'm actually quite proud of. Anyway, that's a preface for the game dev hike. Please sit back and enjoy the next 30 to 40 minutes of the video. I'll see you soon. I want to welcome you all to another game dev hike with me, Oliver Joyce from Whiskey Barrel Studios. We've had a crazy few months here in Australia. It has been a season of fire, more recently a season of flood, a season of storms, of devastation on a national scale. And as such, I haven't been able to get out for one of these hikes in quite a few months. So I'm looking forward to getting out on the trail and just dispensing some, game dev wisdom, a few stories from my life, whatever comes into my head. These things are never really planned. If you saw the last hike, there's just whatever pops into my head is what you get. And I hope you can join me for the next hour or so as we walk and talk along the beautiful Great North Walk of Sydney's northern suburbs. All right, everybody, come with me. Let's go hiking. So here we are in the Australian bush once again. It's been basically since October since I did the last hike. And as many of you know, what basically made world news was the devastating bushfires that are completely burnt most of the east coast of New South Wales, which is where I'm from. And what I'm going to do now in this particular hike, I'm going to mix it up a bit and show you the trail a bit, because you don't always need to see this handsome face. So let's flip things around. There we go. So here's where we're going. Beautiful wet trail here. Maybe in Europe, where many of you viewers are, you're getting used to seeing green and water everywhere. But in Australia, we're in a drought, and it's been one of those things that for as long as I can remember, there's been dry and drought. And we are the driest continent on Earth. And rain is scarce. Every now and again, you get conditions like we faced this year where, for whatever reason, heat and dry winds and man-made fires and so on just combine to create huge bushfires that absolutely devastate. And I used that word before, but I'm using it again because it's basically what happened. Areas the size of some states of America. These are how big some of these fires were. There were hundreds of fires that raged, and they completely wiped out a lot of this countryside that you see here, this kind of bushland. There were bushfires here in the north, where I live, north of Sydney. Small ones. There was a fire near us, but they were able to put it out quite quickly with giant helicopters that dropped this called flame retardant soil, and they were able to put it out. Now, I just want to have a quick chat to you about climate change. You may believe in it, you may not believe in it. Fact is, it's happening. It's a real thing. I don't want to get too preachy on what's essentially a game dev video, but here in Australia, we're basically at the front line of all of this. This is a reality for us. The effects of climate change can be felt in Australia, where things are already getting hotter, they're already drier. Our magnificent barrier reef, which is that huge stretch of coral that goes from sort of northeast Queensland and down, that is dying, and much of it's been dying. Not to make things too political, but this is something that our government and successive governments have just ignored. You know, they keep building coal mines. They still want to build more coal mines now, and which is, you know, crazy for me to think. We're in a hot, dry country. Why aren't we building more and more solar? We basically could, I heard this somewhere, we could be the Saudi Arabia of energy, you know, of solar energy. How amazing would that be? Anyway, let's flip things around. Here we are on our trail. So yeah, we had huge fires that swept through, and they burnt from, you know, a month, 2 months. There were days where the sky was choked with ash and was grey, but it wasn't from storm clouds. It was grey from smoke from fires hundreds of kilometres away. And you'd go outside and, you know, you'd taste ash. It was, you know, not to be too dramatic, but it was really full on. You know, there was a lot to it. You can see here, this is a blackened tree. This is from planned backburning, and no doubt these trees here have all been burnt in a fire earlier. And what they generally will do is they'll create fires that just stop bigger fires from leaping across. And when you have that, it makes a big difference to you know, stopping big fires. And there's been a lot of debate about how successful that's been, but it's definitely something that you know, is effective. Anyway, I just wanted to show you a little bit about the world that we live here in Australia. And after the fires came the floods, and you know, in the last weekend or so, we had enough rain to fill our dams for the better part of a year. We had, you know, our dams were almost empty, and now they're up to sort of 70-75%, and it's crazy. My own house, the downstairs basement started to flood, and I was down there with buckets, you know, filling things up. It was kind of crazy. Did that for 4 or 5 hours. Then we had a blackout, and we had no power for 5 days or something like that. No, 4 days, I think. But you know, it's been an interesting few weeks, few months. This is not the summer of my childhood, that's for sure. The heat is especially hot, and the rains are few, but when they come, they're torrential and spectacular. And now, after, you know, a week of solid rain, everything is green again and beautiful, but it is still kind of scary. So there we go. That's all I'll say about the bushfires. And you know, we're safer now. Most of the fires have been put out because of the rains. But you know, if you have any doubts as to where the climate change is happening, it's a real thing, and something to be well aware of. Believe it or not, I've actually been hiking for a few hours now, and only now have I started videoing properly, because I couldn't think of any topics for the day. Sometimes it happens, you just don't have the inspiration, but I'm sitting here now, and I have quite a view, which I'm going to show you. Now, it's hard not to be inspired by this valley, which is pretty spectacular. And that is our inspiration for our first topic. What game engine should I use? And my answer to that is whichever damn engine you want. There are so many ways to make games. So many tools. There are so many platforms. You can make games on pen and paper. You can make games coding from scratch or using a fully fledged engine. It's also sort of one of those unanswerable questions in that how long is a piece of string, right? You really never can be sure of what you want to make. You know, there is many different game engines for many skill levels, many different game engines that may not be right for you and that kind of thing. But most importantly is, what kind of game do you want to make? You have to decide that first. If you're coming to it, so I guess this hasn't been very helpful for you. That's the end of the video. No. I got a little experience with making games in a few different engines, and I'm only really going to talk about the engines that I know today. But oh look, here's our track. So we're actually going down the Great North Walk here, as you can see, the Blue Gum Walk, which goes down into this valley here. So I've been making games for a long time, and for most of my game development career I was using Flash. Now Flash is no longer popular, but in its heyday it was everywhere, all over the web, and it was great for people who were artists and programmers, and you know, it just did a bit of everything, and it was really approachable and easy to use. It's been phased out pretty much now, but you can actually still make games in it if you wish, because of a framework called Air, which is what I actually use to make most of my Sword to Sandals games are still made with Air, other than Spartacus, which was made in Unity. Oh look, there's a tree. A tree has fallen down on our path. That's because of these crazy storms. So we're going to go down here now. So you can use Air if you wish. It's made by a company called Harmon. It used to be made by Adobe. Personally, I wouldn't recommend learning Flash and Air and the language behind it, ActionScript now. I wouldn't bother, because it's pretty much, if not dead, very much a dying platform, even though you can still make games, you know, for mobile and desktop and so on with Air. I just don't think it's the ideal tool anymore. I first started out making games in programs like GW Basic, which is it was a basic language, literally basic by name and basic by nature. And I then moved on to Pascal, which is another programming language. These are all text-based games, but my first sort of multimedia style game that actually included, you know, proper graphics and so on, I made using a program called the Games Factory, and that went on to become Multimedia Fusion, or ClickTeam Fusion as it's called now, and that still exists. That was a really fun tool, and you could get some pretty cool games made in that using a very simple, mostly non-programming way. You sort of put all these dots on a spreadsheet, and you'd go from there. Look at these ants down here. What are they looking for? Often you'll see ants before a storm, and that's interesting because there may be a storm coming. Let's have a look at the clouds. Yeah, it's looking kind of grey, but I have a raincoat, so I'm not too bothered. Where was I in my ranting? I'm still here, by the way. Still here. You can watch me for a while. Oh, look, there's some Banksia men. In the last hike, I found some Banksia men before, and these interesting native plants that grow. They're actually part of a Australian kids story where it's called the gum nut babies or something like that. It's quite some. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not really I'm sort of struggling with advice today, and that's why I haven't videoed for a few hours. And I may or might not post this to YouTube. Just depends on how much content I feel like is worthy for you people to sit through. But anyway, bear with me if you will. I wouldn't recommend ClickTeam Fusion either, because that's been around for many years, and I think that is, if not at the end of its life, towards the end of its life. I mean, the thing is, you can make games with any of these tools, but it's just easier these days to make games in more modern tool programs. The popular ones right now are Unity, Unreal, Godot or Godot. Whoa, Godot, go downhill. Tripped on a rock. Tragic. Godot and Phaser is another one. I'm going to go through those ones because I've tried a few of them. Phaser is a HTML5 language, and that is basically it's a framework made in JavaScript, and JavaScript's the language of the web. So if you wanted to make games in a web browser, Phaser is a pretty cool option. There's a lot of documentation and quite a lot of help on the forums and so on, but the problem I have with Phaser is it changes quite quickly, and it's really mainly the work of one guy, even though other people do work on it now and again. This one guy called Richard Davey who does the lion's share of the work, and he's always changing it, and it can be hard to keep up with things with Phaser. And because it's a web-based game framework predominantly, it's not as powerful, and it's really only suited for 2D. You can make some really cool, simple 2D games in it, but so far I haven't really enjoyed JavaScript game development, and compared to everything else I've done, I've found it to be hard work for lesser results. It doesn't impress me much, to paraphrase Shania Twain. Look at this beautiful valley down here. This is the Australian bush. This is worth saving, This is a lot of what was lost in many of the bushfires, and it's unlike anywhere else in the world. So that's Phaser. Now, next up we have Godot, which is a newcomer. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's only sort of started becoming more and more popular lately, and you're starting to see some really impressive results with it. I think they're up to maybe, I'm going to say version 3 or 4. That could be a guess. I've never used Godot, so I can't really recommend it or not recommend it, but this one is really getting legs, and one of the reasons why is because it's open source. And open source is pretty cool. What that means is that a lot of people work on it. The code is put up on a repository like GitHub or something, and then people can basically take forks of it and take that code and edit it and then make improvements and bring it back, which is a really rapid way of developing a framework. And it means that if the person who's originally working on the framework gets bored or gets hit by a bus or just doesn't want to work on it anymore, the framework isn't lost. And same as if one company is working on something and then they decide to not work on it anymore, the framework isn't lost either. And that's sort of what happened to Adobe Air, and that what people are worried about with things like Unity is that it's the work of one company, even though it's a massive company. So Godot is open source, and it looks very powerful for 2D and 3D, and I can say that that's something I'm keeping my eye on, and I wouldn't mind trying something small in it at some point, just because I've learned to be a bit more platform agnostic these days, and it's something I'll talk about in a little bit. Now, the next framework that is very popular right now is, of course, Unreal, and that is from Epic Mega Games. And Epic have been around for many, many years. They were most famous for Unreal, but they also had other cool games like I have a mental blank. Back in the shareware days, they were very popular, but they released the Unreal Engine some years ago, and it's predominantly for 3D. I know I've seen some people making 2D games in it, but the tool chain there isn't really ready from what I gather, for 3D, for 2D for most people. As we go down these rocks here. So Unreal has probably the most powerful rendering engine, and right out of the box it just looks great. It just looks incredible. You know, you have really interesting landscape and grass that moves and blur effects and beautiful camera shaders and that kind of thing. Stuff that Unity can do, but it does take more work to get Unity to look as nice as Unreal does out of the box. Unreal has this thing called blueprints, and that is a way of scripting, or actually basically putting the game together using blueprints. Look at this. These cool, interesting rocks. Jump from here to here. Look at this. I always look at these rocks and wonder, how do they get up here? I'm sure any geology student could tell us, but you know, it is quite fascinating. It's the way the weather sort of over millions of years erodes rocks and things like that. Jump. We're in our own little virtual platform game here. Jump, 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 jump. Blueprints. Blueprints are a way of building games just using diagrams basically, and you don't even need to be able to code it. You put this logic together and you drag paths around, and is that a path? I don't even know if there's a path there. Have a look. You guys see a path down there? I feel like I've taken the wrong track. We'll go back this way. So Unreal is definitely a good option if you're looking to make a first-person shooter. There's our path down there. We're gonna go stomping through this. Whoa! All right. Or, you know, something of really visually high definition. I've seen people making little demos of Zelda, you know, like Breath of the Wild kind of thing, remake of Ocarina of Time, Sonic the Hedgehog and so on. You know, it's visually very, very high quality and hard to match. But not having used it, I can't recommend it, certainly for not 2D. Depending on the kind of game you're making, it may be one for you. I heard it's really good for larger teams. It doesn't quite have the massive asset store that Unity has, and it doesn't have the huge community that Unity has. Both Unity and Unreal take a cut of your game's sales. So if you're selling a game, you can hear a waterfall over in the distance. When you come to that soon, it's really roaring. If you sell a game, Unity will take 30% and Unreal will take, I can't remember, it might be 10%, but it depends only if you sell more than a certain amount of copies, and that's something like, you know, if you sell more than $100,000. So if you do that much, you're doing pretty well anyway. You can probably afford to give them a cut. But bear in mind that if you have Godot or Phaser, you don't have to do that. Look at this. We're in a cave now. Cave of Wonders. Pretty cool. We're down towards the water. And Unity. We finally come to it at last. This is the engine that I've been working with for the last year on Spartacus. And Spartacus took me about 10 months. I'd used Unity before for, look at this, the bark has come off this tree. Huge, huge gum tree up there. Very impressive. I'd used Unity before for some smaller games, including one called Dark Rolls, which was a marble rolling game. Wasn't very good. It was on the App Store for a while, but I took it down because it was so bad. Look at this. These rock formations. Incredible. And this is a interesting waterfall bubbling down there. coming from up here. It's lovely and cool at the moment. Beautiful. So we're going to go across this now. Should be interesting. It's quite slippery. Alright, I'm going across. Alright. We survived and gained some valuable experience points and level up. Alright. So, Unity. It's an interesting one. I built Spartacus with it, and I like Unity. I don't love Unity. It's an interesting one. There's a lot of good stuff about Unity that you can make you can make just about any game you could want in Unity, but it has its own way of doing things. You've got to learn it the Unity way. Unity is a complete solution as we go through here. Meaning that, it's got everything in it. You can make 2D, 3D, any game you can think of, all within the Unity environment. But Unity changes and updates quite rapidly, and I have 3 or 4 new builds a year. And one of the problems with Unity is that they tend to rush out features, get them into beta, and then kind of say, well, we're done, that's it, that feature's ready, when often it's not quite production ready, and that can be a pain for people who are trying to build something and when they're trying to use the new Unity lighting and it's not quite ready or something, but Unity says it's ready and they move on to something else that basically they just want features for the box, some people say. And so there's a bit of disenchantment with Unity at the moment. I like Unity, and Sword Sandals 6 will be made in Unity because it's what I know now, and it's I know it better than Unreal, so I'm sure. I've never actually done decent 3D in it though, but of all the engines out there, I would say probably your best bet is Unity. There are 2 that I haven't mentioned, Game Maker and Construct. These are quite powerful 2D game making tools as well. Construct is for making HTML5s, much like Phaser, but it has its own IDE, which is like a program where you can actually design your levels and so on in. So that is another option for you. I've never used it. I think it's for simpler games from what I hear. Game Maker, I've seen some quite powerful games made in, I think Hotline Miami was made in Game Maker, and that is another one where you pay for the software. You have to use a special game markup language, but it is really powerful from what I see. So that has quite a low curve for difficulty as well, so it's quite accessible in that you can jump into it pretty quickly, and that to me feels like a natural starting point for many people who haven't learnt game dev. But with all these things, you just basically jump in. I feel like if you want to be a game developer, start making games. You can make great games in many programs, and you can make terrible games in many programs. Unity these days, for instance, has a bad reputation because because there's so many bad games made with it, and you see the Unity logo before that. And the irony is most of the good games out there pay to not have the Unity logo in front of them, so you wouldn't even know that they're made in Unity. Go figure. So probably some of your favorite games were made in Unity. But my advice to you would be, download a few of them, try some tutorials, try Unreal, try Unity, try Godot, even try Game Maker, and see which one works for you. Maybe spend a month in each of them if you've got time. Go on Reddit, ask the community. Everyone has strong opinions, but my main advice to you would be, don't feel beholden to one engine. don't feel, you know, like one is better than the other, because you can make anything and anything. I used to be a bit, you know, arrogant like that, but I've become so much more platform agnostic these days. And I spent so long learning Flash that when the time came for me to learn something else, I was really resistant, and I struggled for a long time to learn Unity because of that. But now that I have, I've kind of seen the light, and I kind of realize how, you know, easy it is to make a game in many different platforms. So there you go. That's the end of the first game dev hike wisdom for today. I hope that wasn't too rambling for you, and I'm going to do another video soon when I can think of some gems of wisdom before the end of the trail. Right, the next topic for today is an interesting one. Hopefully it's interesting, and it's how can you make money as a game developer. And you know, to be honest, if I truly knew that, I'd probably have a camera crew following me around and not a little tripod camera like this. So there you go. That was the end of the video. No, I gotta stop doing that stupid joke. I have been making games since I was a kid. Since I was 7 or 8 years old. You've heard this story before if you've watched enough of my videos. My dad had an old PC, and he gave me the old PC, and it had a programming language on there called BASIC. Look at this tree that's fallen down. Wow, that's really cool. These are all because of the storms. Another fallen tree. And I learnt to program BASIC from books, from reading books, and I typed out the code. So I've been doing it for a long time. I didn't make any money doing games until I was in my early 20s. And in a future video, I'll actually tell you a little bit about my career as a game developer, or my career in general, not just as a game developer. But I really made my first money as a freelance game developer when I'd been working in Flash for a long time. You can go that way or this way. Hornsby Station, 4 kilometers. We will go this way. All right. So I was making games for myself, but I never made any money. And I'd learned Flash and so on. And then I was approached by a company called P&O Cruises through a contact of a friend, and they wanted a little web game. And I can't remember the name of the game, but it was basically we were on a cruise ship and you had to serve difficult customers. And it was actually an internal game for P&O staff, almost to boost their morale. And it was just a fun little game that sort of, you know, in Australia we have a saying, take the piss. And that was basically to take fun at annoying customers. And I got paid $10,000 to make that game. And that was in my early 20s. And that game probably took me about 6 weeks. So at the time it was more money than I'd seen in a long time. I'd never earned that much money for one particular thing. And I was thrilled, and I thought, wow, I can really make a go of this. But after that, I never really got much freelance work as a game developer again until, you know, I started working for other people, and they made the money. I worked for companies, and for a long time there was money in what's called adver games, which are just like that P&O one. They're games that people make to sell a product. And when Flash was really big, so were adver games. But that market is pretty much dried up. When was the last time you played a game in a browser, you know, with a company brand? So that market's pretty much died. So those avenues are mostly gone. most game developers these days either work for AAA, big games companies, or they're indies. And most indies, so if you're not working, let's rule out the AAA game developers. You have to be very good to become one of those. You can become one of those if you work for a long time or you're very talented. And in general with those, you'll earn a salary. They work long hours. There's a lot of crunch in the industry. But, you know, that is where most game developers are employed. That's one avenue for you. I've never done that, so I have no advice on that. Which leaves indie game development. Independent. That's the indie. Independent. What does that mean? It means you are making a game and you are independent of financial support. You might have a partner or a business partner or even a publisher, but generally, oh look, a little some kind of lizard. You might have, yeah, business partner or some kind of publisher and that kind of thing, but you are in theory making money from the games that you make. Now, they say there's never been more indie games and indie game developers out there than there are today. And that, in many respects, is quite a discouraging thought. And even I get discouraged about that, you know. And often I think, how sustainable is this? You know, I've been doing this a long time and I'm mostly financially independent now because of it, but I still have to work a few days a week because I have a family and a mortgage. But I'm one of the relatively lucky ones because I've had a hit game back in the Flash days in Swords and Sandals, and that has somehow carried me to this point that I'm still able to make money making those games. But if I'm starting from scratch, let's say I've never made a Swords and Sandals game. I've made a few other games, whatever. Assume I have no name in the games industry at all. No one knows who I am. What do I do? How do I make money? Look at this cool tree here. Very gnarled. Amazing. How then do I make money as a game developer? And it's a lottery. It really is. And I'm kind of, you have to be so lucky. There used to be an approach called the shovelware approach, and some game developers still do that. And that's basically making lots and lots and lots of games, flooding the app stores and Steam and so on with just games that you make in a week that are kind of garbage and they kind of follow whatever's popular. So if, say, someone makes a Flappy Bird game, you make a clone of that. That's one approach. I have a feeling that approach fails for most people these days because the app stores are so flooded that you don't have, you don't have the visibility you used to. And a lot of the shovelware developers are now kind of large, Russian enterprises or, Eastern European enterprises that splash money around and pay for a lot of advertising. Where are we going to go? We will go this way or this way? We should go this way for a while. What was I saying? Yeah, you're competing with all these people that spend thousands and thousands of dollars on advertising, even the crappiest games. They flood the market with that. So my advice is don't make crap games or knowingly make crap games. And I know not everyone sets out to make a crap game, but you have to sort of pick and choose the kind of games you're going to make. Make them good, or try and make them the best game you can. So, assuming you're not trying to make a shovelware game and your aim is to make money as a legitimate game developer, How then do you do that? I wonder. I'm actually wondering about which way to go. We'll keep going this way for a little while. How then do you make money as a game developer trying to make a living by making a game that they love and that they think will sell? You have to put in a lot of time, a lot of it. Find out what you're good at first. Find out what is your strength. If you're a programmer, team up with a good artist if you can, or find, pay for art packs and that kind of thing. I have no problem in general with asset packs. Asset packs are collections of art and things like that you can find online and pay a price for. This is really steep. And you can get those and populate your game with them, and I would do that early on. Do that until you feel like your game has some legs. You want to build what's called a prototype, and just use placeholder art and art that you bought, your $30 collection, that kind of thing. Don't go off and spend all this money on art until you know that your game is going to be, well, you believe in it. I can hear a trombone. Listen. Not sure if you can hear that, but that's very strange. On we go. You know what? I think we're going to turn around. I think we're going to take the shorter road back, so we'll take this up in a second. And we're back here at the sign, and me deciding not to go down that path is almost a metaphor for indie game development, because often you're going to take on paths that may be beyond you. That was another 8 kilometers that I didn't really want to do today. And often with indie game development, you are biting off more than you can chew and you don't realize it. And knowing when to pull a plug on a project is a valuable skill. So, sorry, this hasn't been the most helpful video as far as how can you make money on indie game development. You gotta build your game. That can take a long time. Understand that for all the help you get, there's a cost. So if I bring on one person, I either pay them or I give them a revenue share. And then I need to sell twice as much to make any money. If I bring on 2 people, again, less money. And so there are games out there that sell 100 times more copies than Swords and Sandals. Yet arguably, on a per person basis, I don't know if they're making more money than me. Games that you would know very well, that might have, 100 employees working on them, chances are each individual employee is only making similar amounts of money to me. At the top, of course, the executives are making lots of money, but that's not fair. That's how life is. My advice to you, if you want to make money as an indie game developer, work fast, work on something you love, but do a bare bones version of it. So if you're making a roguelike game or something, find out what's different about your game, focus on that, and just do a smaller version of it, and then cut out the features, the extra features, until you have a version that you're sure is going to be a hit. Because if you start building these games, and you say I'm making a roguelike game and I spend 1 month putting in 1,000 different weapons and armor, then a month later I'm bored of the game, what have I lost? A lot. I've lost 2 months' work. So there are 2 ways of making money in indie games. You can spend a long time and work on a game that's really, really polished. You can take 3 or 4 years to do it, and then hope that it's success. It is success. That it is a success. Sorry, I can not hear myself over the plane up there. And the other way is to build as many games as you can, not shovelware, but fail hard, fail early, fail often, keep going. I got about 10 or 12 games out there now, and in the Swords and Sandals franchise, and plus a few other games that have been out there in the app stores, and most of them have made money. One, the Classic Collection, has made a lot of money, relatively. Swords and Sandals 2 Redux has made a decent amount of money, and between those two, that almost covers the other games which don't make that much money. So I made Swords and Sandals Pirates, and it took me over a year. That has still not made its money back in terms of if I was to charge a year of programming development to make that, I would still be in the red for that. So you got to be lucky, and you got to be tenacious. Tenacity and luck are the keys, because you're going to fail and fail often, and you have to just be prepared to keep going. I often say that making indie games is like writing your own ticket for a lottery. You actually, you're building your own ticket, and then once you have got the ticket, then you enter the lottery. There used to be a time when you could just make an indie game, and it would get covered by the press, and it would get it out there, and everyone would say, wow, that's awesome. 2013, 2014. There are some huge name indie developers like Ed McMullen, Jonathan Blow, Phil Fish, who all made very professional, polished games. I would argue that if they release those games these days, they might not have any of the success that they did. And I think they know that. So, a lot of it is right place, right time. A lot of it's talent. It's ultra competitive out there these days, and I often wonder if it would just be easier to have a salary and be a regular programmer, But I love game development so much that I find it hard to imagine doing anything else. And if you feel the same as I do, why not give it a go? At least never quit your day job. That's one piece of advice from me to you. Please trust me on this. Don't quit your day job to make your game. You might want to go down to 4 days a week if your work will allow you. That's what I did. 4 days, 3 days, and now I'm on 2 days, and soon it will be full-time Whiskey Barrel Studios. But that's taken me, basically 5 years to get to that point. I've had to sort of, slowly build up the revenue for my games, keep making games, replace 1 day's revenue, 2 days revenue. If you quit your day job to build a game and that game fails, you've lost a lot. But hang on, having said that, there's also another school of thought. Look at these beautiful trees. Look at this. Huge gum trees. Really amazing. If you quit your day job and you're young and you're keen, why not just go for it? I feel like my advice is given from a place of responsibility, and as I said earlier, I have a young boy, a wife, and a mortgage in one of the most expensive cities on the planet, in Sydney. And that's no joke. There's big expenses, and so I have to be responsible, and I can't just throw out my day job. If, however, you're young, say you're 23, you're working at McDonald's or at a local printing place or whatever it is, and you have a little bit saved up, or you can afford to maybe work once a week at night just to pay the bills, why not take the chance? Take 6 months off your job, smash out this great game, see how it goes. I mean, that can sound irresponsible, but I feel like in your early 20s you can afford to make lots of mistakes, and that's not a mistake. If you learn and you decide it's not the career for you, that's not a mistake. If you decide that it is the career for you, even if your game doesn't do well, you haven't really lost a job that you really wanted anyway, in most cases, you know what I mean? So if you believe in your game much enough, why not? The ways of making money as an indie game developer, other than, you can make money commercially by selling your services to other people, but that's rarer and rarer. The era of the advert game is kind of gone. In some ways, it's been replaced by the VR market. And if you have an interest in VR, virtual reality, there may be an option for you to learn some virtual reality. Unreal and Unity have tools for this. I'm not sure about Godot, but it might. You learn how to do some virtual reality. There are a lot of architectural, engineering, medical firms that are really keen on virtual reality, and that space is about to explode, and already is, in terms of the money that's being splashed around. If you get on board with that, I would say your chances of making money as a VR developer, not necessarily a game developer, but making virtual tours of, a gondola ride down Venice, or architectural programs, or even, going inside a human heart with virtual reality. This is where the money is at. Take my advice. I would go for this, unless you really want to be a game developer. Because game development is feast and famine. There's a huge chance you won't make any money, and a tiny chance you'll make huge amounts of money. Most games in the app stores and Steam make less than $1,000 lifetime. And I think that's like 90% of games these days. Isn't that crazy? About 10% of the games make more than that. And most games take 6 months, a year more. That's unsustainable. So they keep talking about an indie apocalypse of these explosions of games being, a critical mass, and then everyone stops making games. I don't ever think that's going to happen, but it's so hard to make money as an indie developer these days. I never want to encourage you not to make games, but I just want to just say, be aware that chances are you're not going to make much money. Even my latest game, Spartacus, hasn't made much money. We're in the process of porting it to Switch and the app stores, where I feel like it will make some money, but so far it hasn't made a whole lot of money, and that took me best part of a year. And we're talking, it has made, I can't tell you the exact number, but it has made some money, but nowhere what I'd hoped for. These are the highs and lows of game development, and I understood that when I made it. You never know if it's going to be a hit or not. I learned a lot about Unity along the way. I still love the game. I think it's a fantastic game, and I had a lot of fun making it, but it will take some time for me to make the money back on that game and hopefully make a profit. But not to discourage you at all. Please don't let this feel like a call to stop making games, because it's never been a better time to be creative as far as the tools and the just the availability of audience out there for your game. There's so many people that still consume games and so on, and for the right games, there is a huge chance to make millions. And if you just want to make games for a hobby, man, get into it. And you may make money if you're not worried about that. It's a beautiful career. It's a wonderful hobby. It's a lot of fun. Oh, let's do some platform jumping. Boing, 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 boing. Yay, we gained a life. So we're pretty much at the end of the track now. I'm going to keep walking up this way for a little while, see where it takes us. I'll keep talking a little while. Someone's house there. That other path that I was going to go down led to a place called Galston Gorge, which is another 8 kilometers, and I've never been there. And I hope to go there on a future day. I would have gone today, but the day was just starting to get away from me, and so we just ran out of time. Anyway, that's enough about the process of making money as an indie game developer. We have time for one more video today, I think, as you prepare to climb the stairs of infinity up here. this last topic is one for the fans, really. It's what am I doing this year for the games? And, you know, a lot of you people already know what's going on, but for those who don't, I'm currently hard at work on Swords and Sandals Crusader Redux, which is a remake of 2007's Swords and Sandals Crusader, which is one of the more popular games in the franchise. You know, you walk around battling other armies, trying to take control of the realms of Brandor. And that game's going really well. I would say I'm about, 33% complete on that game. I'm hopeful to have it finished by April, May. I'm using the Sword and Sandals Pirates engine, and because Sword and Sandals Pirates and Crusader were quite similar, I've been able to leverage a lot of the code from that to make this game. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to be recording a new theme song for that, which I'll be singing. You know, the Swords and Sandals Crusader, that nonsense. And that will also accompany the game. I've got a few other new good songs for the game, one of which is on SoundCloud. A few people have heard, but a few others you haven't heard yet. Oh, this is a steep staircase. So we're going up and up. I can feel the legs burn. After Crusader, we will be starting work on Sword and Sandals 6. And it might take a little break in between for a month or so, see what happens, but Sword and Sandals 6 is the big one that I've been talking about for a number of years. It's the game that will, without too much hyperbole, this will either make or break the franchise. If it does well, I might be able to hire more staff, really set up Whiskey Barrel as a real game studio for the long term, not just working out of my bedroom. Not to downplay the achievements that I've achieved so far, which I'm really proud of. I've made a good amount of money, or I've made enough to replace most of my day job with this one, but I really need that big hit to be sustainable. To be honest, I haven't had a huge hit game since Sword and Sandals 2. Well, Sword and Sandals 2 Redux did okay, but I really need Sword and Sandals 6 to be a hit. I really want it to be the game that everyone hopes it can be, and that means multiplayer. That means a game that takes the best parts of 2, the best parts of 3, and adds new features, not gimmicks, but new things that enhance the classic gameplay. I want this to feel like a really modern take on the old games, but still a little classic, and that feels like a bit of a juxtaposition, but I want it to feel the way you felt. I want you to feel the way you felt the first time you played Sword and Sandals 2, and I know that's very hard to recapture, and I'm always going on about nostalgia being a powerful thing, and I think I'm learning that you can't always recapture nostalgia, but perhaps your own children might enjoy Sword and Sandals 6 and you might enjoy playing it with them. I want it to be that kind of game. I think the multiplayer aspect of it is something that is really important, because I remember playing Sword and Sandals 3 against random strangers back in the day and really just getting a kick out of them beating me with tactics I hadn't heard of, and that sort of the friendships you find along the way, and there's a lot to be said for a good multiplayer game, and if Sword and Sandals 6 can have that, I'll be very happy. So I'm already in the works planning that game at the moment. I've got a lot of design stuff in Google Docs, and I've worked out about 20 arena champions so far, but a lot more to come. I haven't worked out the details of the battle and so on, and but it will be an interesting one, and that might take, I would say, easily 18 months, maybe 2 years. So in between that, I hope to release a few other small Sword and Sandals things. There are a few other small, more casual games that I want to release as part of the Sword and Sandals world. There's the choose your own adventure style game, Tower of Bargle, which I actually wrote a lot of back in the day. I wrote, I don't know, 30,000 words or something, maybe more, and 500 entries in this already. So that's a pretty substantial project, but I kind of lost steam on it. It's about 6 months ago and I stopped working on it, but I will come back to that at some point. There's also a more casual, kind of I won't spoil it, but this one, 3 heroes on a platform fighting monsters. That's the basic premise. I'd like to build that one for you guys as well, you know, as a side project, because I never have enough side projects, right? I'm still working, of course, on the Tome of Lore. Ah, yes, we've climbed the stairs of infinity. All right, climbed all the way down from that valley. Now we make our way through the last bit of bushland, last part of this section. The Great North Walk actually goes for hundreds of kilometers, which we won't be doing today, of course. But which way are we going to walk? We'll walk up this way. The Tome of Lore is now over at swordsandsandals.com. So if you go there now, I've got a new website, and the very front page features the Tome of Lore. I've been writing this for a few years. I finished the chapters on Crusaders and Sword and Sandals 2 and Sword and Sandals 1 and Pirates. I'm halfway through Sword and Sandals 3, and that's with the Arena Champions, but it has to take a back seat while I do all this other stuff. But I'm continuing to work on that throughout the year, and that's basically the wiki for the game. It's a really great place for me to kind of flesh out the relationships between the characters and the Arena Champions and the places. And as the game and the game world gets bigger and more kind of Tolkien-like, more Lord of the Ringsy, I need to keep track of these things. So that is where everything's going to go. And I often take the ideas that I get from you guys, from Discord and via email and so on, I try to sneak them into the tome wherever I can. And there's a whole bunch of things that I haven't put in yet, like there's a cool character called Prince Anasword, who will be making an appearance. He's a Takashi prince that will be appearing in Sword and Sandals 6. There's other characters for Constellation Mirror. There's a special battle axe, which is a really, there's a great story about it from a guy called Bardi, and the battle axe is dedicated to his father. And I thought that was a really moving story, and so there'll be a very powerful axe in one of the future Sword and Sandals games dedicated to his dad. There is a lot ahead for Sword and Sandals. I've had moments where I never want to walk away from it, but I get tired of it, want to do other things. But I think at some point you kind of realize that's your thing. It's like, it's so hard to have any kind of success, either as a writer or an artist or a musician or a game developer. And when you do, I think you got to kind of embrace it. You know what I mean? You have to, while the fans still want the stuff, I want to keep making it. And that, I guess, is at the heart of what I'm trying to say in this video. Once again, thank you to all of you who support me and on Discord and Patreon, and just via nice emails and Facebook messages and so on. Every day or so I get a nice comment or something from someone who said they played the game as a kid and still remember it, and that is really, it's humbling and heartening. Well, we've come to the end of today's game dev hike. I want to thank you for joining me. It might have felt like a short one because I walked for hours before and actually did any recording, but I hope you got a few little gems of wisdom. Next time we'll record a longer section, and I look forward to seeing you all in. Until next time, my friends, I salute you, and bye for now.